Today, as is not a surprise to you, is December 21st. And if you are a meteorology junkie, kind of like I am, then you know that today is the winter solstice. And in fact, just after 8 a.m. our time this morning, that was the actual moment of the solstice. So the days are already getting longer. Can you notice the difference already? And because it's December 21st, I'm guessing we're all probably pretty exhausted. And we're all getting ready for Santa's visit. And we've all been making cookies. And we've all been finalizing our dinner menus. And here at church, we've been making sure that all of our printers and copy machines are working just right. And by the way, that's in the prayer book that the week before Christmas and Easter, the printers and copy machines are guaranteed to go out. That's just in the prayer book. It's part of life in the church. But we're working on it. We're making sure that the liturgies are coming out just right. And there's lots of preparations that we're all doing, seeing as today is December 21st and Christmas is coming later this week. So I hate to disappoint you, but I'm here to tell you that today's sermon will not be a terribly long one. Now that I think about it, though, I've had a lot of feedback about my preaching over the years. I don't think anybody has ever told me that a sermon that I preached was too short. So let's roll with that. Let's roll with that. Here we are on the fourth Sunday of Advent, and let's have a look together at the gospel passage that we just heard, because we were told all this took place to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet. Look, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and they shall name him Emmanuel. Now, this is a piece of scripture that we're all very familiar with. And we're told in the very next verse that word, Emmanuel, means God is with us. And it's such a beautiful reminder to us of the importance to us as Christians of the birth of Jesus. But what does this all mean? And why do we have the story of Jesus' birth on the Sunday before we're going to celebrate Jesus' birth? Well, the Luke Nativity story is by far the more popular, more familiar version. And that's the story that we're going to hear together on Christmas. The Matthew story isn't quite nearly as detailed, but it's important that we hear that one too. So why not hear about the birth of Jesus now? I mean, let's be honest. If we're not in the Christmas spirit yet, we're probably not going to get there. But we have this interesting piece of scripture telling us that the birth of Jesus is the fulfillment of the prophecy we hear in Isaiah 7:14, which is what our first reading was this morning. Emmanuel means God is with us, and Jesus is God. So Jesus must be Emmanuel, right? But just a few lines before that, we're told by the angel that Mary is going to have a son, and she's going to call him Jesus. How is that possible? You're going to name your son Jesus, but you're also going to call him Emmanuel. Well, we know that the word Jesus in English is not the same word that we would have used for the name of the person we call Jesus. And we know that Jesus would have never answered to that word, that name, Jesus. The word Jesus in English comes from what we call a transliteration. And it's been transliterated a few times to get to where we have that word that we use. A transliteration is not a translation of the meaning. It's a translation of the way a word sounds. So instead of changing the word, we try to make the word sound similar to what it sounded like in the original language. The word Jesus that we use in English is nothing like the word that would have been used for the name of the person that we call Jesus. His name was Yeshua, which is more closely translated to Joshua in English. But Yeshua, a Hebrew name, was translated into Greek. And it was Iousus in Greek. And then that word was transliterated into Latin as Iasus. And eventually, it was transliterated into the English Jesus. And it lost the sh sound because there is no sh sound in Latin. So we don't say Jesus, we say Jesus. And he would have had no idea who we were talking to if we traveled through time and we said, "Hey, Jesus, over here." And his name, by the way, was not Christ. That wasn't his last name. We wouldn't have called Mary and Joseph Mr. and Mrs. Christ. Christ is a title. It's not a name, and it means the chosen one, or the Messiah, the anointed one. Now, why am I doing this to you? Why am I telling you this the week before we celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ, that there never was a person named Jesus Christ? That's pretty rude of me, isn't it? And how about this? The Hebrew word Yeshua, Jesus' name, doesn't mean Emmanuel. It means salvation. So what do we conclude now that I just completely ruined the Christmas story for all of us? It means that the writers of the Gospels appropriated the stories from the Old Testament to make it work in the New Testament. Now, does that mean that it isn't true? And the answer is no, it doesn't mean that. Does it mean that maybe they were playing semantics? Possibly. They possibly were. But does any of that matter? And the answer is no. The book of the prophet Isaiah was not written for a Christian audience. And it wasn't written as a prediction of the future. It serves as a reminder to the Judean people that God is with them. God never left them. God has always been with them. And today their descendants are known as the Jewish people. And God has always been among them. But what about us? We're not Jewish. We're Christians. Is God with us, even if we're not part of that community? Yes. And this is how. Christianity has not superseded Judaism in ownership of the presence of God. And it's very important that we as Christians remember that. The Jewish people are and always have been God's people. God made a covenant with the Jewish people, and that covenant is still binding. But Christians also have a covenant, the new covenant. Not a replacement covenant, but a new covenant. A covenant that recognizes that Emmanuel, the presence of God among us, means that God manifest through the incarnation and lived among us. Isaiah wasn't talking about Jesus. Isaiah lived hundreds of years before Jesus. He couldn't have known about Jesus. But he did know that God was with us. And we know that too. And the birth of Jesus, for us Christians, confirms what we've already known. God was with us in the beginning, and God will be with us forever. Now, we're all finalizing our preparations for the Christmas holidays in our own ways. Now, some of us have long-standing traditions so that Christmas can be just right. Otherwise, it doesn't feel like Christmas. And now that I think about it, I think I've said that sentence every year for the last 30-plus years. It doesn't feel like Christmas. But what does it mean to feel like Christmas? And why are we so worried about chasing some romanticized feeling? Because if we do that, and we have to make sure that it feels like Christmas in a very specific way, then we run the risk of missing the point. And it's a subtle but important point. It's the point brought to us in today's gospel. It isn't the semantics of saying Jesus was the Emmanuel from Isaiah, because he wasn't. And it isn't the semantics of saying Jesus Christ was his first and last name, because it wasn't. It's the reality that God is among us. God is with us. Emmanuel. The story from Isaiah wasn't telling us that some guy would be with us and we would call him by the name Emmanuel. He was saying that God is with us. Emmanuel. Jesus is God. And the birth of Jesus gives us assurance that God is with us. God was with us before, and God is with us now, although in a very different way. And he's with us in a humble way. Born to a young virgin in a stable because there was no room for them in the inn, and swaddled and placed in a manger as a crib because that was what was available to them. This tells us that we don't need to be anything that we're not. We are loved just the way we are. And that's the message that I want us all to focus on as we finish our Advent journey together. You know, maybe we didn't find the perfect gift for that special someone. Or maybe the packages that we sent didn't arrive on time because we procrastinated by mailing them. Maybe we don't have anyone to celebrate the holidays with. Maybe for you, like for me, this will be your first Christmas without your mother. Life isn't always rainbows and butterflies and ponies and unicorns. But you know something? Emmanuel. Emmanuel. God is with us. Through thick and thin, God is with us. God is with us when things go well, and God is with us when things are going poorly. All we have to do is recognize Emmanuel. To me, Emmanuel is the presence of God in Jesus. But it's also the presence of God in all of your faces. It's the presence of God that is so tangible in this place that continues to welcome people from all over. So my question for you is, where do you see Emmanuel? Where do you see God among us? Because if you do recognize that, if you do recognize Emmanuel, then that's great, and I want you to keep doing that. But if you haven't gotten there yet, I invite you to open your heart and open your minds and open your way of thinking to see how God is actively among us. Because God is indeed with us. In the best of times and in the worst of times, God is there. And God is by our side. So when we celebrate Christmas in a few days, may we be ever mindful of the presence of God. Emmanuel, Yeshua, Jesus, the Christ, the Anointed, is among us. We are loved, and love manifest on Christmas.